Hello, welcome to my tutorial series on VCV Rack 0.5, which is the latest as of this recording. VCV Rack is a virtual modular synthesis DAW, or digital audio workstation. If you don't know what modular synthesis is, don't worry. I myself started learning it, researching it a couple months ago, bought a bunch of real-life modules, and discovered VCV Rack, and it's pretty cool. So let's check it out. So after installing, you're presented with this screen where you have your basically workspace and some very minimal UI at the top. We'll cover most of this later, but one of the most important things to do in the beginning is to click this Manage Plugins button. This will bring you to a website where you can create an account or log in and then add the official plugins to your account. I recommend you do that because they're all free, and then click this Refresh Plugins button, and that will download all the plugins associated with your account. Actually, in order to see these buttons, I think you have to sign in. Give it your name and password, and click the login button. Then you're able to do this stuff. Once you've done that, then you can right-click in the workspace, and you'll see a manufacturer's list, as well as when you click a manufacturer, you'll see all the modules associated with a manufacturer. You can also search here in the search bar. So you can say the core, and then it'll search, or you can say LFO. And it will find just whatever you've typed. You can also search by tag. So let's say you're looking for anything to do with MIDI. So you can type MIDI, and then it will find all the ones tagged with MIDI. Clock, let's say. Yeah. Anyways, that's a search bar. So to get started, just right-click and click Core, and then Audio Interface. This will come up with a module. This will create a module that represents your sound card. At the top, you have your audio driver, which will be one of these. If you have ASIO, then select that. If you don't, then do WASI API. And if you don't have that, then do direct sound. I have an ASIO driver, so I'll do that. I'm running an Army Fireface sound card, so we'll select that. You can leave the sample rate on 44.1 kilohertz and block size 128. The inputs and outputs basically represent your sound card. So I've rigged it up to record 3 and 4. I'm recording in mono, so you won't hear the left and right speakers, but that's okay. It's not really all that interesting anyways. So how do you hear sound? So basically you have to create a module. So right click again and then go to Fundamental, and we'll explore some of the basics. So the easiest way to get a sound is an oscillator. So you want to, let's create this VCO-1 voltage controlled oscillator. So at the bottom, there's a bunch of outputs. Those are all black. So we have a sine output, a triangle wave output, a saw wave, and a square wave. So if I left click and drag, I'm dragging a patch cable from that sine output to wherever I want. If I drag it to 3 and let go, it's going to play a very loud sine wave. And that's pretty loud. If I drag it to 4, it's the same thing. Now the bad thing about a VCO, it doesn't have a way to control the volume of these guys. It's just how modular synthesis works. Each module does one thing and pretty much one thing only. So if you want to control the volume of an output signal, you have to use another module. A common module to do that with is a VCA, a voltage controlled amplifier. So this module itself has 2 VCAs, one on the top and one on the bottom. They're both identical. So we'll just use the bottom one. So the bottom one has a big knob to control it's basically an amplifier, so it's just the volume, it's a volume knob. We'll explore these two later, but we have an in and out. So let's route the sine from the in, and we'll route the out to number 3. But first we'll turn it all the way off. So now we hear nothing. So there we go. Now we can control the volume. Now I also want to route this output to 4. So how do I do that? If I left click and drag, I'm removing that cable. So I don't want to do that. So what I can do is I can hold down Control, and I can drag a new patch cable over to 4. If I want to delete that patch cable, just drag off and release, it deletes it. Another way to multi-route from one output is to drag from the other direction. So I can drag from 4, put it in, and there we go. So now we have a volume knob associated with with this oscillator. So let's turn it up just a little bit so we can hear it. Now we can see there's a big knob here, that's the frequency. So if I turn it down, yeah, it's low frequency. Turn it up, it's high frequency. Very good. Now, one thing to do when you're just learning, or even anytime, is to hook up an oscilloscope. So you can actually visualize these waves, so you can actually see what's going on. So you can do that in VCV Rack by going into fundamental and going to scope. That's an oscilloscope. So we'll just put that down here and we'll hook up the X input to our sine wave. And there's our sine wave visualized. I'll just turn this volume off so we don't hear it constantly. There's our sine wave. Now if we adjust the frequency, you can see it's getting smaller. You can see the frequency adjusting. Low frequencies are slow, high frequencies are fast. To cover the basics of this oscilloscope real quick, you have a scale that visualizes the scale change. It doesn't change the sound at all. It just visualizes how big the X is. So we'll leave it there. It's fine. And then this time is how much time passes inside the oscilloscope. So we'll leave it there. That's fine. This Y, you can hook up a Y signal. I'm not going to do that here. So we'll just leave that over there so we can see what's going on with our VCO. So let's look at the triangle wave. So you can hear it's a bit sharper. It's a bit sharper than a sine wave. Now, if you notice, this is not a perfect triangle wave because it's basically emulating an analog device. So if you click this little switch right here, it goes to a digital perfect representation of a triangle wave. So it doesn't sound too much different, but slight differences. So you might like the analog sound better, you might like the digital sound better, it's up to you. Let's look at the saw wave. That's really loud. Alright, so there's the analog representation, there's the digital representation. Alright, let's go to a square wave. Now with the square wave, you also have this knob right here, which is the pulse width modifier. Which changes how wide the squares are. Which kind of leads us into kind of the whole point of modular synthesis. Let's say I wanted to modify this knob like this, but I didn't want to sit here clicking and dragging or manually turning this knob. So one way we could do that is with another module. Something that operates at low frequency, something that oscillates at low frequency, namely an LFO. So if you right click, go to fundamental again, there's an LFO-1, so let's create one of those. And this thing is very similar to this guy, but if you notice, he's operating very slowly. This light, his frequency is very low, it's slow. This guy is operating very fast. This guy is operating at audio rates. This is an audio rate. That's why we can hear it. It's not slow like over a second. So if we oscilloscope this guy and look at what he's doing, put him in there, and we had to slow down the time. Now we can see how long he's taking to go back and forth, his sine wave. So he's going from 0 up to 1 pretty slowly. Let's also drag him. Let's control drag this sine, and let's route him into pulse width modifier. Now nothing's happening over here. Now why is that? That's because the control voltage, the PWM control voltage, at 0. So this knob is not, see the light is slowly blinking, which is good, that's what we want, but it's not affecting this. We want it to go back and forth. The way we do that is we upgrade this knob. So this is controlling how much signal to let through. It's kind of attenuating this signal, multiplying it. So if we let the whole signal through, then we can see it go, when it goes to high, it's all the way. When it goes to low, and so on. So let's say we just want a little bit of that signal to come through, or multiply it like by a small amount. So now we can just see it slowly wobbling. Let's listen to it. let's say we wanted to adjust faster. We can change this big knob on the LFO. So that's kind of the point of modular synthesis. You know, with a simple patch cable, we can, you know, we can route these LFOs to anything we want. And let's just kind of repatch and kind of create a virtual soundscape. Now, obviously, this doesn't sound very musical. It's not going to win any Grammys or anything. But just like starting to learn any musical instrument or any digital audio workstation, any DAW, it's not going to sound too good in the beginning. But if you build up a big set of modules, you can actually make some pretty harmonic and very musical things, either with virtual modules or real-life modules. And obviously, it can get very complicated and very complex. But this is just the basics. We're just learning all the knobs and inputs and outputs. This is actually a good time to talk about the UI a little bit more. So at the top we have a file menu, which lets us save and reload our workspace, which is actually one very good thing about VCV Rack compared to real-life modules. Because in real life, when you create these patch cables and adjust these knobs, there's no way to save it in real life. You could take a picture and try to get the knobs perfectly realigned, but it's pretty tough. With VCV Rack, you can save it all precisely, so you can kind of reload it. It's all perfect, which is kind of nice. There is some creativity though in real life stuff, because every time you end up with something new. But that's a debate for another time. Anyway, we have cable opacity. So if we go all the way up, the cables are fully opaque. If we go all the way down, the cables are invisible. So 0.5 is fine. Cable tension, if we go all the way down, the cables are super droopy. All the way up, the cables are straight lines. I think 0.5 is good. Zoom allows us to zoom the workspace, so we can zoom all the way out. Let's see, where to go? That's in the corner. So the one thing about VCV Rack is it, oops, get out the scroll bar. It has a very big workspace. You can keep scrolling for a long time. I don't know if there's a limit, but it doesn't seem to be. You can scroll in both directions for like a ton. So you're not really confined to a small little workspace. But for this beginner series, we're going to stay at high zoom, and we're going to focus back in on our simple modules. What else to talk about? So let's see. So we've explored these bottom black outputs of the VCO. We've explored the pulse width modulation buttons, these guys, the frequency and the knob. Let's actually look at the fine control. We didn't actually look at that. That's a very easy one to talk about. So if we listen to this, now if we adjust the fine, it's just kind of a slower, it's just a slower version of the frequency. That's a fine grain knob. So the only other things to talk about are these three right here. So the sync knob, that basically lets you reset and sync multiple oscillators together, as I understand it. So you can send a signal to both of them, and the output of when they start their sine wave will be in sync. It's kind of hard to hear, but it's good for some certain situations, of course. Let's talk about these two. So FM. So FM is similar to, FM is just adjusting the frequency. So if we want to LFO the frequency, we can drag a patch cable over to this guy. Now notice nothing's happening. Our sine wave is standing still. It's not shifting again, because the FMCV controls how much to let through. So if we slowly let through a little bit, now we can see the frequency is being adjusted just a little bit. If we crank that knob, now it's going from high to low really quick. So if you adjust it kind of around here, you hear the flying saucer sound that probably they used in 1950s movies. This is probably how they did it, with a simple VCO and an LFO. the simple routing. Kind of neat. So you can kind of do whatever you want. The only other thing we haven't, so actually the other thing we haven't looked at was this hard and soft. Now I can't detect a difference. If I turn hard and soft on, it doesn't seem to do anything. So if we get rid of that, so there's no difference there. Doesn't make any difference there. So I don't know. I don't know what this button does. If you know what it does, let me know in the comments so we can all learn what's going on with this thing. Doesn't seem to be any difference. I don't know. Whatever it does, I can't tell what it does. So let's take a look at, let's go back to our sine wave. And take a look at this volts V/oct. So this is volts per octave. This is typically hooked up to a some kind of pitch, the control voltage that's a pitch. It's like typically a keyboard, you know, a piano that sends pitch notes or MIDI. But you can hook it up to an LFO. Let's listen. Let's see what happens when we do that. Now you see here it's cycling. It's going between all the frequencies because our voltage is going from 0 to 1, which is basically, you know, ramping this guy all the way down and all the way up over and over again, which isn't exactly what we want. You know, if we hear it, it sounds nuts. And that's because this signal's too strong. So what we can do is we can put a VCA in there. Now I could use the top VCA, but let's just create another one just to keep it clean. So let's move this signal over to the input of this VCA. And we'll monitor what this VCA is doing, and then we'll route to that, and then we'll basically use this level knob to control the amplitude of this LFO. See, now it's not going so high. If we set it back to default, it's going, you know, it's going pretty high. You know, we can ramp it all the way up. Or we can make it very tiny, you know, if we look it down here. So if we make it tiny, then this volts per octave, this is getting a very low voltage at the peak, and now it's, you know, it's slowly moving us. So it's very similar to the FM. You know, it's very similar to our FM. This is just more for, like I said, pianos or MIDI notes. So I think that's about it for the VCO. There's a few things on the VCA we haven't looked at. So to explore that, let's plug into this VCA. So this VCA controls the level, the volume, right? So if we take this off and then we say, okay, I want something that goes like this, right? But I don't want to sit there and manually move that knob. That's what these guys are for. So EXP is exponential, and then LIN is linear. So you can move that knob linearly or exponentially based on the control voltage you're sending in. So let's listen to what linear does. So it's very slow because our LFO is slow. So there we go. Oops, I didn't route it through the VCA. Let's route it through the VCA. So we can hear it there. So if we can hear it going really fast now. Not very slow. Exponential is the same kind of thing. It's just exponentially ramping the curve. You know, it's a little bit better probably for audio signals. Linear is typically better for control voltage signals, non-audio signals. So let's see. Yeah, so you can see how I need to ramp that signal up pretty high for it to be have an effect. Let's see if I make this pretty low. You can hear how exponential barely makes a difference, whereas linear does make a difference. I don't really like the brown patch cables. So that's a VCA. So now we've explored both the base of the VCA. Let's take a look back at the LFO and see what other things we have in our LFO. So our LFO has a bunch of outputs, just like we saw over here. A sine. Yeah, so if we take a look at the scope for a triangle wave routing through our VCA. You know, it's a triangle wave just like we saw over here with this VCO. We have a sawtooth wave, which is a standard sawtooth wave. And we have a square wave, which is, again, has pulse width modulation, just like we saw before. We can also control that pulse width with the PW, with this guy, just like we saw before with this CV. We also have two FMs, just like we saw over here. So we can actually adjust the frequency of this LFO with another LFO. So we can go super nuts. And then we have a reset button, which just kind of resets the LFO. So if you're in a long sweep, if you want to start it at a certain spot, you can reset it and get it in sync with other things. So you can see how the scope, it's like now it's zeroed, and uni means it's going from 0 to 1, whereas this is going negative, from like -1 to 1 or whatever, 0.5 to -0.5. 180, I think, is just flipping it. So if you look at the sine wave, yeah, you can see how it's like, see, whenever I click it, it's doing the opposite signal. So it's good if you want to kind of have an inverse signal. Kind of more obscure advanced situations would need a inverted signal. Let's take a look at what happens when you frequency modulate an LFO with another LFO, and that's kind of the power of modular synthesis. You can keep kind of stacking these things to make really nuts stuff. So we're gonna route an LFO into this guy, and so this signal is controlling the frequency of this LFO. So if you still have to adjust this CV. So let's say I'm gonna turn the CV up. So you can see, let's add another scope. So let's right click and duplicate, put this scope over here, route that in. And so now we can see we have a very slow sweep. When this first LFO reaches its peak, it adjusts the frequency on this LFO and makes this LFO super fast. And when it's down low at 0, it makes this LFO go back to its normal kind of slow pace. And so now we can take this signal, this output signal, and route it to whatever we want. Let's say the frequency of this guy. So now you can see how he gets nuts every once in a while. So I can see I can make this guy fast. Or this guy even slower. Or let's say you want to adjust the pulse width. That's loud. Doesn't sound too good. Let's see. See if I can adjust it to make it sound better. Yeah. No luck today. Anyway, that's kind of stacking LFOs kind of look there. You can also, of course, all of these LFOs output each of these simultaneously. So you can actually use the triangle of this guy to modulate the pulse width of this one. So let's get rid of this one. So now we just have this this LFO here in the mix. And we can use the saw to adjust the volume. Now all of these are at the same rate. But let's say you wanted different rates. So you could say, okay, I want the triangle to be over from here. Which is adjusting the pulse width of this guy. So now I can adjust the rate of this pulse width, and it's moving fast, as you can see over here. And let's make a third LFO. And let's have the third LFO trigger the sound. Let's make it real slow. So now the sound is fading in and out really slowly. And as it fades in, you can hear this pulse width adjusting really quick. And you can see the frequency being modified. Don't need this VCA anymore. So you can kind of make some nuts patterns by stacking modules and just building up a very complex module soundscape. And eventually maybe you'll arrive at something musical that you kind of like. And you can spend a long time twiddling knobs. Alright, let's see, is there anything else I'm missing? I think that kind of covers the basis. Now you have, of course, two FMs, so you can actually modify one of these LFOs with two LFOs. So you can build up really nuts sounds. I think that covers the basics, so that's a good look at the VCA, the VCO, the LFO, and the scope. Next time, hopefully we'll take a look at some more of these modules inside Fundamentals and Core, as well as some of the other plugins manufacturers, and maybe even eventually some of the third parties. Try to explore some of these modules, and so my own personal learning as well as you guys. So anyways, thanks for watching. See you next time.